There are moments when life seems to play with precise coincidences. A friend's call at the exact instant you were thinking of them, the insistent repetition of numbers on the clock, an opportunity that arises at the perfect moment. These episodes don't sound like mere chance. There is a silent pattern revealing itself, as if the unseen were sending signals that something greater is already in motion. Bruce Lipton explains that our beliefs and internal environment modulate biology itself. The body works like a radio tuning into emotional and mental frequencies. When we repeat states in the subconscious, we create chemistry that over time becomes events. It is not magic, it is biology responding to the field of consciousness. Here enters the central metaphor, synchronicity as the shadow of reality. Before an object appears in its complete form, its shadow already announces it. So it is with signs. They are not the destination itself, but the anticipation of a timeline approaching, projected in fragments before revealing itself in full. Neuroscience shows us that the brain is a prediction machine. It filters attention and highlights among thousands of stimuli that which is congruent with our inner state. When we unite focused attention and coherent emotion, reality seems to conspire. Not because something outside has changed, but because something inside has. Joe Dispenza calls this state coherence between mind and heart. When intention merges with an elevated emotion, new circuits are recorded in the brain, bringing the future into the now. This video is therefore an invitation to go beyond superstition and step into the practical mechanics of synchronicities, understanding how they cease to be mere signs and become bridges for embodying the reality we desire. Before the form appears, the shadow comes first. That is the role of synchronicity, not the object itself, but the initial trace of its existence, projected on the path. When we notice a sign, whether a repeating number, an unlikely encounter, or a phrase that resonates deeply, we are seeing the shadow of a timeline that has already begun to move. It is natural for the human mind to feel curiosity in the face of such clues. They awaken fascination, almost as if the universe were whispering secrets. But there is a crucial difference between mystical curiosity and practical reading. The first tends to idolize the clue, while the second recognizes it as an invitation. The risk of superstition lies precisely in confusing the shadow with destiny. Just as a shadow can lengthen or shift with the light, so too do signs not guarantee the final outcome. They only point toward the direction of movement. To cling to them as absolute certainties is to forget that what matters is not the shadow, but the object it announces. Training the eye for synchronicity is therefore learning to use it as a reminder, not as a fixed oracle, but as a sign that your inner state and the outer field are in dialogue. It is in this dialogue that reality adjusts, not in the obsession with collecting signs. Thus, synchronicity takes its rightful place, not as a mystical trophy, but as a bridge. It indicates that something is gestating and invites us to align the inner state so that the future form finds space to fully manifest. Quantum physics reminds us of something essential. The observer is not neutral. The simple act of looking already modifies the outcome. This means that attention is not just contemplation, but choice. When you give meaning to a sign, you are not merely interpreting, you are offering energy for a possibility to gain strength in the field. Giving meaning, then, is not fantasy. It is a parameter of collapse. What you observe with affection, intention, and decision tends to become more probable. This is why the same event can pass unnoticed by some and completely change the life of others. The difference lies in the quality of attention each one gives. When a sign appears, the first impulse is usually the wow of enchantment. But that enchantment, if not nourished, vanishes like a spark. The invitation is to transform that instant into an act of consciousness, to notice, to recognize, to give thanks, and to sustain the emotion for a few seconds longer. This prolongation is what stabilizes the new route. A simple practice can help. Notice, name, nurture. When you perceive a sign, give it a name. This confirms my openness, this reflects my choice, and nurture the sensation for about 90 seconds, breathing into the coherent emotion it awakens. This small window of time is already enough for the brain to record new circuits and for the body to memorize the state. Thus, the observer is not just a witness, they are a co-creator. Each time you transform a clue into conscious presence, you help collapse a probability into form. The sign ceases to be mere curiosity and becomes a living seed of reality. Imagine two particles that, even when separated by vast distances, continue to influence each other instantly. This is the principle of quantum entanglement. And while it is a physical concept, it also works as a metaphor to explain the relationship between our inner state and external events. What we feel inside finds resonance in what organizes itself outside. That is why such common experiences, like thinking of someone and then receiving their call right after, don't need to be seen as magic. They are examples of how inner states connect with external patterns, creating meaningful links that go beyond the logic of chance. The danger lies in forcing coincidences, seeing signs in every little detail, even when there is no depth of meaning. Sanity comes from observing not only the event, but also the context and the emotion that accompanies it. The more coherent the inner state, the clearer and more consistent the external signs become. A useful practice is keeping a synchronicity journal. By recording not only what happened, but also the emotional state present at the time, we begin to notice deeper patterns. This record reveals that synchronicity speaks less about the event itself and more about the vibration being sustained. Thus, we understand that life is not a board of random pieces. There are subtle entanglements between what we feel and what happens. The inside moves the outside, and the outside returns mirrors that help us recognize more clearly what we are emitting. The human brain is not just a recorder of reality, it is a prediction machine. At every instant, it makes forecasts about what is likely to happen, and then filters attention to highlight only what confirms its internal maps. This is why when someone buys a new car, they suddenly start seeing the same model everywhere. The brain has adjusted its focus. This mechanism explains why some signs may be genuine synchronicities, while others are just reflections of attentional bias. The difference lies in emotional impact and context. Pareidolia makes us see patterns where there is no real density of meaning. True synchronicity, however, carries a force that strikes deeply, making it impossible to ignore. Practices of open awareness, such as meditation, mindful walking, or simply quieting the excess of stimuli, expand our capacity to perceive what lies beyond automatic filters. When we are not trapped in rigid expectations, the field of perception expands, and we become more receptive to meaningful surprises. A micro-habit can support this process. Asking yourself in the morning, what is my body expecting to encounter today? This simple check reveals the internal maps currently active and helps you notice whether your focus is leaning toward lack or toward possibility. That adjustment opens space for genuine signs to be noticed clearly. Thus, we understand that it is not the world that suddenly changes, but our focus that reorganizes. When we align attention and emotion, precise coincidences cease to be rare and become the natural expression of a brain learning to perceive what was once invisible. Inside us, there is an orchestra. Every thought, every emotion, every bodily sensation is like an instrument playing at the same time. When one of them falls out of tune, the whole ensemble loses harmony, and the external field responds with noise. But when mind, heart, and body align, a clear music arises. One the universe hears and replicates in the form of synchronicity. Research on heart rate variability shows that when we breathe in a balanced rhythm and evoke genuine emotions like gratitude or compassion, the heart enters coherence. This state organizes the brain, regulates hormones, and creates a stable magnetic field that enhances intuitive perception and conscious manifestation. It is in this state that signs seem to multiply, not because the universe has decided to speak more, but because we are finally transmitting a clean signal. The field does not respond to fragmented intentions, but to the clarity of physiological and emotional coherence. A simple practice can help scale this state. Breathing in a 4-6 rhythm, inhale for 4 seconds, exhale for 6, while accessing a genuine emotional memory of joy or gratitude. While sustaining that sensation, you can direct a specific intention, not as a demand, but as a vibrational signature. The indicators are clear: less urgency, more clarity without tension. When coherence sets in, life does not need to be pushed. The field begins to adjust naturally, and signs cease to be rare, becoming part of a continuous flow. When signs begin to appear, it is natural for enthusiasm to arise. But along with it can also come the trap of misinterpretation. Many trade presents for counting. They start hunting for numbers, repetitions, or coincidences, turning synchronicity into statistics. At that point, the practice loses depth and becomes disguised anxiety. Another common mistake is interpreting signs as tests from the universe. The mind, still seeking validation, ends up turning coincidences into judgments. This creates fear, as if each absence of a sign were a reproach. Such interpretation breaks trust and puts the person back into the vibration of scarcity. There is also the risk of projecting instructions onto neutral signs. Not every unexpected event carries a specific message about what to do. Synchronicity is not an external GPS, but an internal mirror. It confirms states of being. It does not hand out detailed orders for the next step. The antidote lies in changing the question. Instead of asking, "What should I do from this sign?" the wiser reflection is, "What inner state of mind is being mirrored right now?" This inversion removes the weight of superstition and returns creative responsibility inward. Thus, signs stop being riddles and become vibrational confirmations. They don't come to control choices, but to remind us of the state we are sustaining. And once we see this, synchronicity ceases to be anxiety and becomes clarity. There are periods when synchronicities seem to disappear. The clock no longer repeats numbers, chance encounters don't happen, the universe seems silent. For many, this creates insecurity. Did I lose my path? But silence is not absence. It is a threshold, a space of recalibration before a leap. Neuroscience shows us that when a prediction doesn't come true, the brain enters a temporary state of emptiness. This hiatus is not failure, but remapping. The nervous system needs this pause to integrate new patterns and prepare perception for a different level of coherence. Spiritually, this silence works like the darkness before dawn. It is the moment when energy compresses to gather strength and expand in a new direction. Resisting or trying to force signs during this interval only prolongs the sense of disconnection. It is helpful to see that the natural flow of synchronicity organizes itself in cycles, clusters of signs followed by periods of integration. If we can recognize this rhythm, we learn to trust both the presence and the absence of external indications. An anchor statement can help in these moments. I trust the silence before my adjustment. This phrase is not a plea but a reminder that emptiness is also part of the process. Silence is not the end, but preparation for the next alignment. Many walk the spiritual path collecting signs, as if picking up breadcrumbs left by life. This stance keeps the focus outside, always waiting for something external to validate the next step. But there is a turning point, when we stop chasing clues and begin to radiate the frequency we want to live. Becoming the sign means embodying the identity even before seeing results. It is like lighting the room from within. Environments organize themselves, conversations align, encounters seem spontaneous. Not because you hunted them down, but because you became the source of the vibration they reflect. This state is not reached in a sudden leap, but sustained through small daily choices. A morning begun with conscious breathing, an upright posture, and a clear core phrase can shift the entire tone of the day. When state comes first, tasks stop being burdens and become natural expressions of the chosen identity. At this point, signs cease to be rarities and become landscape. They appear not to convince, but to confirm. You no longer need to chase them because you have become the vibrational reference. Synchronicity transforms into a stable field around you. Thus, from seeker, you become emitter. And that is the true power, not depending on chance, but living as a center of gravity, radiating coherence. The universe doesn't need to send constant proofs when you yourself are already the living proof of what you believe. There are moments when a sign appears and sparks a flash of emotion within us. That instant is precious, but often gets lost in seconds, swallowed by the rush of daily life. The 90-second protocol is a simple practice to transform that fleeting spark into the conscious collapse of a new possibility. The first step is pause. Interrupt the automatic reaction and dedicate 3 cycles of long, deep breathing. This pause pulls the body out of urgency mode and creates space for the experience to be fully felt. Next comes feeling. Activate a coherent emotion. It could be genuine gratitude for something specific, joy for a simple detail, or love for someone who comes to mind. What matters is that the emotion is real, not forced. Then comes the stage of embodiment. For a few seconds, visualize the already is as if it were happening now, and adjust your body posture to reflect that state. Shoulders open, breath steady, gaze present. The body records what it enacts with authenticity. Finally, plant a behavioral seed. Take a small, concrete action that symbolizes this new timeline. Send a message, do some research, organize a space. This way, the emotion doesn't stay only in the inner field. It translates into action, strengthening the bridge between shadow and form. Just as a musician needs silence to tune their instrument, we also need to tend to the environment around us to sustain internal coherence. The quality of the information, conversations, and stimuli we consume directly influences the clarity of the signal we emit. The field responds not only to what we feel, but also to what we allow into our space. Constant noise, toxic news, excessive comparisons, vague promises act as demagnetizers. They drain energy, scatter focus, and contaminate presence. Likewise, quick dopamine habits such as excessive social media consumption or sleepless nights weaken our ability to sustain coherence. Informational and energetic hygiene doesn't need to be rigid, but it does need to be conscious. Reducing exposure to destabilizing content, choosing readings and music that uplift, prioritizing real rest, each adjustment is a way of preserving the vibrational field. A brief ritual can serve as daily alignment, 3 to 5 minutes of rhythmic breathing, accompanied by an identity phrase and an intention for the day. This simple gesture reorders mind, emotion, and body, creating a stable base to interact with the world without losing your center. Finally, relational ecology is part of this curation. Surrounding yourself with people and conversations that reinforce the chosen state strengthens coherence, while toxic environments require clear boundaries. The field we cultivate inside is always influenced by the field we inhabit outside, and tending to this is a way of honoring your own frequency. Bruce Lipton reminds us that when belief changes, the inner environment changes with it. The body stops repeating old chemical patterns and begins to produce new biological signatures. Life, in response, organizes itself according to this new field. The synchronicities that arise in this process are not random miracles, but biofeedbacks, external confirmations of the programming you sustain within. Neville Goddard used to say, "Live in the end." This idea is simple and revolutionary: to adopt in the present the identity of one who already lives what they desire. When that state is embodied, signs stop being clues to chase and become natural consequences. Reality doesn't need to convince one who is already aligned with the already is. The synthesis is clear. A sign is not a trophy, but an invitation. Silence is not absence, but threshold. Coherence is not luxury, but mechanics. When you understand this, you leave behind dependence on external clues and step into the role of emitter, the one who generates the field, attracts circumstances, and sustains presence. A final exercise: record a recent sign that touched you. Ask yourself, what inner state of mind was it mirroring? Then translate that reflection into a minimal gesture today, a choice, a word, a simple act of organization, as a way to plant the seed of the new timeline. And close this cycle with a vibrational seal. Take a deep breath, adjust your posture, and declare inwardly, "I am the sign." Let this phrase be not just thought, but breath, body, and presence. This is how the future ceases to be a promise and finds form within you.